Okay, this time of year, Thanksgiving is coming on, we're well into the fall, and you go into the grocery store and you see tons and tons of winter squashes. They're beautiful, they look like exotic turbans, they look like all sorts of colorful objects, and then you get them home and you try to cook them, and they turn out to be a lot of work because they have very thick skins, they take a long time to cook, they tend to get a little bit difficult to get the pulp out to eat, to separate it from the skin. But a big exception to all of those problems that come with these beautiful things are the little squashes we call the delicatas. As you can see, they come in different colors, but they're all about this size and shape. The reason they call them delicata is because the skin is very thin on them and it's edible. So this is so simple to do and so delicious. The first thing I'm going to do is just trim the skin a little bit lengthwise. The reason being that when you actually go to eat these things, the skin can sometimes peel off, and it's nicer if you have these little squares of skin to eat. Of peel, I should probably say. It's not an animal. So, just my little sharp knife, doing that. Okay, that's the first thing. Number two, take a big sharp knife, like this one, and cut off that end, and that end. But you knew that, right? And these guys can go right in my offstage compost bin right here. Now, the next thing we do is, this is probably the trickiest part of the whole thing, stand it up so you have a flat surface to work with on the bottom. It's harder to do if you leave it on its side and then it's rolling around when you're trying to cut. Same way on the smaller one. Now, we're so, and we just are going to use a slightly pointy spoon to get all these seeds out of here. Now, I read somewhere that you can roast these seeds, and they're pretty good to eat, sort of like pumpkin seeds. But I found them to be more like sunflower seeds, really. Not exactly to my taste, so I kind of gave up on roasting these. But I love delicata squash, nonetheless, for not being able to roast the seeds. I'm doing this a little bit off stage, but it's just a matter of scraping it out. And the closer you are to the profile of the seed chamber in there, the easier this gets. Yeah, this is all going into my compost eventually, so maybe I'll have squashes growing out of there in the spring, who knows. All right, and one more. And just to show you how easy this is, just going to get in there and scoop all that out, just like that. Okay, and all that little stringy stuff, I'm trying to get most of that out. It's not the end of the world if a little bit stays in there. Okay, so that's what's coming out. And we're in pretty good shape now. Get that out of the way. Okay, next thing we're going to do is just cut. I'm going about 1/3 of an inch, probably. 1/3 to 1/2 of an inch. Just cut them in these little C shapes here. And again, this is a very forgiving recipe. They don't all have to be perfectly uniform, like you're some kind of cordon bleu chef with super knife skills. So, while I'm doing this, while I'm doing all of this, my little Breville countertop oven is heating up to 375. And I'm going to give a product endorsement for that little thing because it is something I use 3 or 4 times a day. And the one I have now is held up for 8 years. which is a long time for an electrical heating appliance. And it has convection on it. It's pretty good, pretty handy tool. And so for something like this, I didn't have to heat up my big oven on my big stove. Now, what I'm going to cook these things, in a shallow roasting pan, which I have all set to go right here. Peanut oil, great stuff to have around. High temperature, high burning point. And at 375, you could use olive oil, but I think peanut butter or peanut oil will hold up a little better. So I'm going to sprinkle all these things in here. And you notice I line my pan with foil. Makes everything easier to get out and eases cleanup, obviously. So what I'm going to do now is sprinkle a little peanut oil on them and just stir them around to get everything coated. And then we're going to go with some salt and pepper. Peanut oil on your hands makes this a little harder to do, so we had to do a quick wipe. A little sea salt. There, and a little black pepper. And that is really all these things need. If you really wanted to, you could mix a little nutmeg in here, a little coriander, something like that, but really, this is pretty fabulous just the way it is, and you can always sprinkle on some seasoning later if you want. But I serve them just like this. These things are really pretty sweet, depending on the individual plant, of course, but mostly they have plenty of flavor without any sugar or brown sugar or anything like that. Okay, so I'm just going to put these all in one layer. On the side, this is enough probably for 4 people. You figure one squash per 2 diners, and that's a pretty generous serving. Now my oven is heating up, and I'm going to pop these things in there, 375 on convection in the small chamber for 18 minutes, and they'll be ready to eat.